Behold, taking a glance at real estate licensing exam. A state exam is one of the many steps you need to take on your journey to become a licensed real estate agent. You may think it's the most intimidating step, but don't worry, that's where this book comes in. In this chapter, I provide you with information to make sure that the exam process isn't a total surprise and to show you a few specific details to check out in your state. Because individual states issue real estate licenses, the ultimate authority on your real estate exam is your own home state. You probably get a copy of your state licensing law and state-specific information you need about the exam from the instructor or the pre-licensing course you may have to take. See Figuring Out Licensing Procedures later in this chapter for more details. If you don't get the information from the instructor, or if you're in one of the few states that doesn't require pre-licensing courses, you can write your state licensing agency or go online to find information. Different states have different agencies that handle the real estate licensing, but using a search engine like Google can get you where you need to go. Just type in the state's name and follow by the words real estate licensing laws, real estate commission, real estate board, or real estate licensing agency, and see what websites are listed. If you don't have access to the computer, try calling information in your state capital and asking the agency phone number and using any of the names I listed. Checking out licensing and exam basics. Most states have at least 2 licensing levels for their real estate agents, salesperson and broker. Briefly, the real estate broker is someone who authorizes the state to perform certain activities such as sales on behalf of another person for a fee. A salesperson or someone licensed to do those activities but only under a broker's supervision. See Chapter 3 for more. Some states may have other levels or types of licensing, such as a timeshare agent, associate broker, or a sales apprentice or trainee. In any case, the state administration of real estate licensing exams in each state, different states have different names for their licensing agencies. In the following sections, I'll give you a lowdown on licensing procedures and the differences between the licensing and the exams for salesperson and brokers in the format of the exams themselves. Figuring out licensing procedures. After you decide to pursue a career in real estate, the next thing you need to do is to get as much information as you can about the procedures for obtaining your license. Every state has specific requirements regarding age, citizenship, criminal background, education, and so on. So, specifics about all these necessities, you'll need to consult with your state licensing directly. Each state real estate licensing law typically has provisions on how to become a real estate agent in that state. In addition, it's often specific requirements regarding procedures to follow in your actual real estate business. And by the way, state exams often obtain a few questions about requirements to get your license, such as how old you have to be, or a citizenship requirement. You need to get a copy of your state licensing law, either from the state website or from your instructor. Your state licensing system may treat real estate licensing education requirements and testing in a wide range of ways. Very few states have no educational requirements whatsoever and require only that you pass the state exam. Other states require that you take and pass a minimum of classes online, hours of education before you sit for the exam. And still, other states require you to take not only a minimum number of classroom hours and apprenticeship and more educational courses, but also a state exam after one of both classroom experiences. You likely have to take more coursework and pass another exam to become a broker. So expect to become a salesperson first and get some experience before you can move up to the broker level. Assume that where education is required, and it is most, if not all states, you have to pass a course exam in addition to the state exam. Your state may have only an attendance requirement, but to be prepared for a course exam nonetheless. Where there is a course exam is usually similar to the state exam. This book helps you to do well on both exams. As for a state exam, some states allow you to walk in and take the state salesperson exam before you complete the required education. Not much point to doing so, in my opinion, because the education always helps you prepare for the state exam, and the course exam is a good practice for the state exam. Knowing the difference from a salesperson and a broker license exam. In most cases, you'll probably be pursuing the first or basic real estate license level. In some states, it's a salesperson's license. In others, it's a form of salesperson trainee. How you move up in the real estate ladder varies among different states. The following illustrates two of the many possibilities. In one case, you complete all the necessary requirements, including taking and passing the state exam, to become a licensed real estate salesperson. And that's it. You can stay a salesperson for the rest of your career. To become a broker, in this situation, you probably have to gain some experience, additional coursework, and pass yet another state exam. In the second case, you begin your real estate career by getting a license at whatever level your state provides as an apprentice or trainee, which can involve taking a course in or a state exam. At the prescribed period of experience, you're required to move up to the level of full-fledged licensed salesperson, which can mean more coursework and another licensing exam. You can remain a salesperson for the entire career, in this case too. Moving up to the next rung on the ladder and to the broker's level usually involves additional coursework, an exam, and additional experience. I need to add here that some states may have a way for you to skip part of the salesperson licensing procedure. Although it rarely occurs, doing so usually requires previous real estate experience, and experience may not exempt you from taking all of the required courses, but it may enable you to skip the salesperson exam. You can find out whether your state allows this exemption by checking the license law and speaking with your state license agency. The state has final say over what constitutes a qualifying equivalent, but for example, someone who has sold at least a significant number of his own investment properties might have the necessary experience. Your job as it relates to this book is to identify a particular exam you have to pass at the stage of your real estate career. If you're taking the first ever exam, you're at the salesperson level or at the salesperson trainee level. If you're already a licensed salesperson, you're shooting for the broker's level. Then you need to find out the subject matter on the exam. In the vast majority of states, you're required to take coursework to get your license. Figuring out what you've tested on and using this book to help you is relatively easy. Just match up the material in the course with the various subjects in this book. If you're not required to take coursework to get your license, you can find out your particular exam subject matter by checking with your state licensing agency, and still use this book to provide information and further explanation of the required material. This book covers as many of the subject areas as are typical on a variety of state exams. In general, few topics are covered on the salesperson exam than the broker's exam. Broker's exams cover more subjects because more topics have been added to the list of subjects you'll be learned at the salesperson level. For example, the state might test you on property management, which I cover in Chapter 3, on a broker's exam, but not in a salesperson exam. So if you're taking the salesperson exam in your state, you don't need to worry about property management. However, if you're taking the broker's exam, it's time to brush up on your property management knowledge. If you're using this book to prepare for a broker's exam, be prepared that many broker's exams presume that you learned and remembered everything you covered in your salesperson course. Although the emphasis may be on broker subject matters, topics typically on the salesperson exams are fair game on the broker's exam. So it's a good idea to review all the material from the salesperson exam as well as the new broker's material to learn if you're taking the broker's exam. The topic at the salesperson levels are usually covered at a more basic level than on the broker's exam. Definitions and terminology are most important on the salesperson exam. The broker's exam doesn't cover these additional topics. It may require you to apply your knowledge to specific examples and questions. Two other subjects that could be mentioned for special consideration and preparation are math and ethics. Where appropriate, math formulas and problems are covered in the individual chapters in this book. In addition, Chapter 18 covers a variety of typical real estate math problems, and the amount of math on the state exam varies by state. You need to know real estate math to be an effective real estate agent, but especially for you, math, phonics, you need to find out how much math is on your state exam. Ethics is another subject that varies by state. You need to find out if your state has its own code of ethics for real estate agents, or if it expects adherence to a code of ethics and a standard of National Association of Realtors. Most importantly, for passing an exam, you need to find out how much emphasis there is on ethics questions on the state exam, looking at the format and other exam details. At any point in time, for example, a week after this book comes out, a state may decide to change its exam contents or structure. Therefore, talking with any certainty about the exam format is pretty much impossible. Unfortunately, the format of the exam really should matter when compared with the mastery of the material you have to know. Different structures have different approaches to the same material. If you know the material, the structure won't matter. Most, if not all, states currently use multiple choice question format. Most people feel more comfortable with this format, and the students believe these exams are easier to pass because choices already have been narrowed down for you. Because most states use this format, I've chosen to write all the practice exams in this book, including the 4 full-length practice exams in multiple choice format. How's that for service? Exams are either a single, undivided exam or broken into 2 parts. A general part that covers key concepts such as forms of real estate ownership, fiduciary responsibilities, fair housing laws. State-specific part. In this book, you see many state-specific icons directing you to information that may vary from state to state. This type of information may end up on a state-specific part of these exams. In addition, any questions about state licensing are covered in the state-specific part of this exam. For more about license law, see Chapter 3. You should check with the course instructor or the state licensing agency about the following exam details. Number of questions on the exam you're taking. Salesperson or broker exams may have different number of questions. Whether the exam is a single exam or whether it's broken into general and specific parts. If the exam is divided into parts, find out how many questions are in each part. If the exam is given in 2 parts, you must pass both parts at the same time. If you don't pass one part but pass the other, can you retake the part you didn't pass? Or must you retake the entire exam? Whether the questions are multiple choice or whether any other question format is used. The form of exam, paper or pencil or computer. The time available to complete the exam. There are a few questions you should ask about exam procedures, such as what to bring to the exam. I've given you the information in the following section as well as some hints. Successful test taking strategies in Chapter 2. Sign me up. Registering for the exam. You fulfilled all the state requirements, you've taken the course, read the license log, and so on. These procedures definitely vary by state. In general, though, you have to send an application to the state at some point so you can take the exam. You may have to send the state completion certificate as evidence that you passed the required pre-licensing course. And you probably have to submit a fee. The state exam regulatory regulations details whether the fee needs to be paid in cash, check, credit card, or another method. In the case of a salesperson exam, some states require that you have your application form signed by a sponsored broker. You can find out more about relationships between salesperson and a broker in Chapter 3. It's likely that you have to register online to get a date to take the exam. After competing and sending the appropriate materials to the state licensing agency, you receive an entry permit in the mail or a printable one online, allowing you to take the exam. You will also receive information on whether and when to arrive for the exam, as well as a list of anything else you might need to bring with you. See the next section. Read all the information carefully and follow the instructions exactly. If you have any questions, contact the state licensing agency well before the exam. Keep in mind that in some states, you may allow to take the test by simply showing up at the exam site with identification and a fee in hand. This is usually referred to as walk-in exams. Whether the procedure may be, find out what's the form of the course instructors or the state licensing agency and follow it carefully. It's silly to complete unnecessarily to have your application returned because you forgot to sign it or you sent it to the wrong amount for your fee. Knowing what it takes to the exam and what to leave at home. The big day is almost here. You pass with flying colors. Whatever pre-licensing courses you had to take, you also filled out and sent your application for the exam and got something back in the mail telling you where and when to show up. You reviewed everything in the book that applies to the test you're taking, and you're ready to go. Now start packing. In some places, the questions of what to bring to the exam has produced an art unto itself. General security issues are in effect in many public buildings, and you also need to deal with security issues that are specifically pertinent to the exam taking. The key here is simple. Read all the literature you can find from the state licensing agency or testing company in your state uses to find out about what you can and cannot bring to the exam. Some states have contacted a private company or administrator exams. If this is the case in your state, you can get in contact information about this from the state licensing agency. If you have specific questions that isn't covered in the material, you can call or email the state licensing or testing company and get an answer to your questions. In general, the items you need to bring are a calculator. Pay attention to the requirements for a calculator. Calculators are usually required to be silent, battery-powered, non-programmable. In general, anything that can carry text won't be permitted. Those of you who have a calculator feature built into your cell phone may not be permitted to use them. In some places, you have to sign a form indicating the kind of calculator you're using. If you're using a battery-powered calculator, change the batteries a few days before the exam, or bring two calculators. And changing the batteries in your calculator is usually easy. You don't need a screwdriver or some other tool. You can also bring new batteries with you just in case. An entry permit. Make sure that you bring the entry permit that you received in the mail after you sent the application, because it and other necessary paperwork may be the only documents that enable you to take the exam. Necessarily paperwork varies from state to state, so it's pretty difficult to tell you exactly what you need to bring. But at a minimum, you need the entry permit, and a state permit walk-ins at the exam. You may need the application itself, plus the fee and probably one or two forms of identification. Number 2, pencil. Some states have gone to computerized testing format. If this is not the case, your state, then you probably need some form of famous number 2 pencils. Bring more than 2 erasers. If you buy new ones, sharpen them before you go into the exam. Don't depend on there being pencil and sharpener at the exam site. Sharpened number 2 pencils are a little hard to carry. I always put them in a standardized number 10 envelope. And remember that even if the exam is computerized, you may be able to use scrap paper for making notes or doing calculations. A pen. Bring another along a pen with blue or black ink, as it is a good idea just in case you have to fill out some of the forms or better complete in ink than pencil. A photo ID. An ID of some sort is pretty standard, so bring a photo ID with you. Not all photo IDs are created equal. For example, your state may not count your new photo ID library card. You may even be required to present 2 forms of ID. And if you're not a citizen, you have appropriate documentation with you showing your status. A certificate from your pre-licensing course. The state may require you to bring the certificate you received that shows that you passed the pre-licensing course. In some cases, you may have already sent it in with your application and don't need to bring it. In either case, when you get a certificate saying you passed the course, make sure to make a copy of the certificate and keep it in a safe place before you ever send it or give it to anyone. States have been known to lose documents. Some states require that a real estate school you went to sends documentation directly to the school, to the state certifying that you successfully completed the course. Check to see your real estate school does that. You probably won't be allowed to bring scrap paper, food, books, notes, and so on to the exam. In worst case, you may be turned away from taking an exam site if you have any of these items with you. In a situation almost as bad, you may be asked to leave the unauthorized items in the hallway outside the exam room. If you need to bring food, water because of medical conditions, make sure you get permission first before the day of the exam. In addition, if you need to make accommodations for a handicap, like a use of a wheelchair, make sure those arrangements are made before the day of the exam. Scoring high, figure out how much scores are determined. Information about scores are available from the state licensing agency or the testing agency, if any, used by the state. Here are a few points that you may want to consider. Check out whether any of the questions have equal weight. For example, a state may give an exam with 100 questions, all worth 1 point, but another state may give 2-part exams, with the first part having 80 general real estate questions worth 1 point each, and a second part having 40 state-specific questions worth half of the points each. I find that my teaching that this kind of information seems to provide comfortable to conform to the students because it feels like they know what's going on. To some extent, knowing where the questions have more weight may guide your studying, but in any case, you have to answer enough questions correctly to pass. Scoring may vary from state to state. Most places give you a percentage based on the number of correct answers given. Passing course scores vary by state as well. In addition, some states make you wait for testing results, send them to you by mail, or some states may be able to give you results on the same day you take the exam. Your state may just advise you if you passed or failed. What about getting the big prize, the actual license? In some cases, you receive a temporary license on the day you pass the exam. In other cases, you'll get a license in the mail. In other cases, you'll probably have to apply for the license after you get your test results. Having more than one testing center, a state may vary its procedures from place to place or to another. One center might be equipped to give you your course and even a temporary license right away. Another testing center in the same state may not be able to do that. If getting your license right away is important to you, especially if you have a hot deal ready to go as soon as you have your license, it may be worthwhile to travel a little farther to get instant results. Take 2. Retake an exam. You need to know how many times you can retake the license exam. The state may allow unlimited retakes of the exam, or it may limit you to a certain number of retakes before requiring you to take a pre-licensing course again. Whichever the case, if you do fail the exam and plan to retake it, don't wait too long. Try to retake it the next time it's offered. And if you have a reapply to take the exam, do it right away. But I'll know you'll pass on the first try with the help of this book. The same applies if you have to take the exam to complete real estate courses. Find out how many times you can retake it and when and if you could retake the course itself. The exam itself is actually pretty good practice for the second try. Remember the areas which you had difficulties and then concentrate on those areas first as you study for the retaking of the exam. If you're lucky, you live in a state where you can receive some idea of the areas in which you were weak. Use this information to study the specific material. You also can use and review questions in practice exams in this book to diagnose your weak areas. Checking out the studying and the test taking tips in Chapter 2. For even more help, it won't hurt. Above all, don't grow discouraged. Anyone can fail an exam, but only you can have the stick-to-itness to go back and try it again. That was Chapter 1 of Real Estate for Dummies.